Welcome to Breakfast Central. Our top stories this morning begin with the speech made by Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the ongoing UN General Assembly, which for some reason has sparked conversations at home and abroad. The president, who made his first appearance in this capacity, called for more investments, spoke on security, and touched on climate change, amongst other topics. News Central's Bernard Akede in this report gave a close analysis of the president's speech.
This is my first address before the General Assembly. Permit me to say a few words on behalf of Nigeria, my country.
Indeed, it was his first appearance in the capacity of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and all eyes were on him.
There are 5 points I want to highlight.
These 5 points formed the body of the President's message at the General Assembly. Tinubu spoke on the development of Africa, democracy and military coups in Africa, terrorism and human trafficking, protection of mineral-rich areas, and climate change.
Let me go straight to the very first point, which is the fact that he was encouraging investor confidence and speaking to the need for the global community to find it necessary to support the growth of Nigeria. And so what he then said there is to say, look, one of the key challenges that he sees is the need to remove the fuel subsidy and also the exchange rate alignment.
There have already been 2 coups on the continent since the president assumed office, and as the chairman of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, it was expected that the president would address African democracy and governance.
He owned on behalf of Africa that there is a failure on our part in terms of governance. That was the point he made. He then countered it with a second, or more like a two-edged sword. To say, while Africa may have failed, you guys at the global community, you have also been reckless in the way you have been involved in this.
While touching climate change, Tinubu made reference to the recent earthquake in Morocco and flooding in Libya, but he also made mention of the plans his government has to address climate change back in Nigeria.
African nations will fight climate change, but must do so on fair and just terms. In Nigeria, we shall build political consensus by highlighting remedial actions which also promote economic good. Projects such as Green Wall to stop desert encroachment, halting the destruction of our forests by mass production and distribution of gas burning stoves.
I think it was quite clear, succinct in terms of, look, Africa, we are not yet there, we are moving on, which is a comment being made, or if I may allude to that. The second part is, look, you guys have your role to play because you've also impacted on how Africa is moving on. And I think that is one way you can demand accountability and responsibility.
This will not be the first time some of these points will be made by a Nigerian president. However, the hope is that President Tinubu's words at the General Assembly will be quickly followed with actions back home in Nigeria.
Africa is nothing less than the key to the world's future. I thank you for listening.
Bernard Akede, reporting for News Central.
And there we have it, an update of the president's speech at the United Nations General Assembly. Several reactions, of course, trailed this speech. A number of people, he highlighted several points. We did talk about this, and one of which is democracy and how we must return to democracy. How he made reference to what's happened in Niger and talked about being open to some form of conversations. And the criticism again came that if you're talking about democracy and talking about it in your capacity first as president of the country and commander-in-chief of the armed forces, secondly as the chairman of ECOWAS, can you categorically say that what we've been practicing here in Nigeria is democracy? Those are some of the contradictions that a number of people experienced. Reactions that people expressed towards the speech. It was a well-rounded speech, but some people felt like it's talk. We hope that we'll start to see actions beyond the talk.
Which
Why
is true,
talking?
actually. It is true, that it's talk. The scriptwriter would, create a very, very beautiful script, for any president across the world. And of course, they would deliver these speeches, but what happens next? You know, the same thing that we've been talking about with climate change. You know, for example, when they go to COP23 and COP24 and COP25 and 26 and the likes, you know, and they keep doing these things every year. You know, but how much action really is taken after they leave those places?
Especially because Africa is the least contributor to climate change, but yet suffers the worst impacts of climate change.
I mean, but that's, I'm not even talking about, you know, climate change with regards to Africa. I'm saying generally, even across the world, you know, the people, you know, the West and some of these countries that give these very, very great speeches at these conferences, you know, how much change do they really bring, you know, after, you know, the conference is done, you know? So these are, you know, some of the things that, you know, would be, you know, the concerns of people. And of course, yes, you know, he there represents the giant of Africa, represents Africa, represents a voice, you know, that of course is speaking on behalf of the continent, which is a great thing. But the politics, the political will, the action that needs to be taken to ensure that these things are put in place. Some of the things that he's speaking about, you know, change the narrative concerning Africa, to bring more investment into the continent, to see Africa as a continent that can offer more value and not to see it as a place that, you know, will continue to be plundered, you know, for decades and centuries to come. You know, how will those things change? You know, the continent itself needs to wake up and give itself more value somehow, some way. You know, it might take, you know, decades. It might take even more than decades.
It's interesting that you're saying this, and I agree with you, but who are the people that would ensure that we come to give ourselves more value? Is it not the leaders, the people who are still scrambling for power and scrambling to hold on to seats that they should leave? You know, they sort of made these seats their inheritance that they hand over to their children or people of their own choosing, such that it becomes trouble when somebody else. I mean, it's just a really whole chaotic situation. But we're trusting that things will look better and brighter on the continent.